Our story begins with our young protagonist, who is being chased by a group of guards. They call her by the name Jill Serval. Despite being injured, she continues to fight for her life, determined not to fall in a way that would satisfy the man pursuing her. At that moment, the man in question appears and, with a single attack, subdues Jill, telling her that her end will come tomorrow. Jill recalls that this man proposed to her the very night they first met at a ball. She remembers her adolescence, which was anything but ordinary. Due to her battlefield prowess, she became known as the daughter of the god of war, receiving countless love letters, more from women than men. She never thought about being called heartless because everything she did was for her first love, Gerald der Kratos. Or so she thought, until she discovered his true nature. Now, Gerald has captured Jill and tells her that he never would have imagined the woman destined to be his wife would be on the run, refusing to admit her crimes. Jill quickly defends herself, insisting that the accusations are false. However, Gerald mentions that his sister Ferris has been deeply distressed by all the commotion. Jill comments on how he's always been overly attentive to his sister, to which Gerald replies that indeed nothing in this world compares to her. Here, through Jill's thoughts, it becomes clear that Gerald is in love with his own sister. Gerald then grabs Jill by the hair and tells her that perhaps she would have lived longer if she had maintained her blind faith in him. He even cruelly suggests that he would have allowed her to raise the children he would have had with Ferris, though he couldn't stand the thought of any of them resembling her. After this, Gerald orders the guards to take her away, but Jill swiftly disarms them and attempts to attack him. However, Gerald easily blocks her attack and disarms her in return. Despite this, Jill manages to escape and flees to the top of the clock tower. Once there, addressing him as Your Highness, Jill declares that he didn't get rid of her. She's the one who will get rid of him, as she throws herself into the void. Gerald immediately orders the guards to throw spears at her, but Jill manages to deflect all of them except one. That final spear, surrounded by an unusual aura, almost seems to possess a will of its own. As Jill falls, she regrets the mistakes she's made, but she refuses to let this be her end. She doesn't want to leave the world believing that loving someone was a mistake. With her final breath, as the spear strikes her, she only asks for another chance, because if it were granted to her, she would never let anyone use her again for the rest of her life. Just then, as the clock strikes 12, time suddenly stops, giving an unexpected turn to events. Jill opens her eyes to hear someone calling her. It's her parents. This is impossible, as she had lost them long ago. Through their words, she quickly realizes that on this day, Prince Gerald turns 15. The strangeness of the situation hits her, as she should be 22 years old, leaving her confused about what's happening. When she is welcomed into the ballroom, Jill immediately recognizes the place. Seeing her reflection in the window, she's shocked to find she looks like the young girl she once was. When the youthful Prince Gerald arrives, she quickly makes an excuse to leave, saying she needs some air. This is part of her strategy. Whenever faced with a crisis, Jill runs until she can come up with a plan that works. She heads toward a door she knows leads to Ferris's room, Gerald's sister. Here, Jill reveals to us that her engagement to the prince had been nothing but a facade to hide the forbidden love between the two siblings. When Jill discovered the truth, Gerald annulled their engagement and, the next day, had her arrested on false charges, resulting in a death sentence. The charge? Attempting to poison the princess, a perfect excuse to silence her and protect the royal siblings. Jill's attempted escape leads us back to where the story began. Our young protagonist now finds herself on a balcony, reflecting on the situation. Although confused, she believes she knows how to avoid repeating her past mistakes. Just then, Gerald appears, once again with the same intent, to propose to her. However, this time Jill is faster, slipping away and returning to the ballroom. Now, Jill desperately tries to devise a new plan, claiming she has a boyfriend wouldn't work given her age. She needs someone untouchable by the prince. As she continues running, she briefly encounters a strange creature, which vanishes as quickly as it appears. Slowly, Gerald closes in on her. In a moment of desperation, Jill grabs the nearest man sitting nearby and boldly declares to the room that she's in love with him. Gerald is furious and the entire ballroom falls silent. To her surprise, the man eagerly accepts her declaration, but as Jill hears his voice, she realizes her grave mistake. For the sake of her survival, she couldn't have chosen worse. The man in question is Hadis Teos Rave, the future tyrant emperor who, in 6 years, will plunge the country into chaos. This is how Jill unwittingly proposes to the most dangerous man in the land. Jill later awakens, bewildered, in a guest room at the palace. Soon after, Rave enters, asking if she feels better. He kneels down and, with a calm demeanor, asks her to properly propose to him. Jill is baffled by his request, noting how vastly different he seems from the tyrant she knows he will become. In that moment, Jill experiences a flashback of her encounter with him in the future. She recalls how Rave ordered the massacre of everyone, including women and children, declaring that no family member was worth sparing. He had spoken coldly of making people suffer, and when Jill surrendered to halt the slaughter, Rave had no interest in honoring the surrender of a defeated soldier. Desperate, Jill offered herself as a prisoner, claiming that the daughter of the god of war would make a valuable war trophy. Rave, although reluctant, decided to withdraw his troops after accepting her offer. Back in the present, Jill compares the two versions of Rave, this gentle man now before her, and the ruthless tyrant from the future. The contrast is so stark, it feels as though she's looking at a completely different person. Almost tenderly, Rave helps her into a pair of small shoes, gently placing them on her feet to keep her warm. For the first time, Jill experiences what it feels like to be treated as if she were a fragile, innocent child. Despite all her battlefield experience, nothing could have prepared her for this. At that moment, Gerald bursts into the room demanding an explanation. A tense standoff follows, Rave, protective of his future wife, and Gerald, refusing to accept the engagement, insisting that Jill is promised to him as per their family's agreement. Rave remains unfazed. He picks up Jill and, with calm confidence, warns Gerald that challenging him would be unwise, as they are not on the same level. His imposing presence silences any further protest, and with ease he walks out of the room, effortlessly subduing the guards in his path. Rave apologizes to Jill for scaring her, and mentions that he highly doubts Prince Gerald will give up so easily. He then swiftly teleports them to a ship, planning to take her to his kingdom. He offers her new clothes, which makes Jill wonder why he had women's clothing on hand. 5 minutes later, Rave returns with tea and a delicious dessert. Jill enjoys the treat, thankful to be alive. Still, she asks the Emperor how seriously he's taking the engagement, especially considering her age. Without hesitation, Rave responds that she's perfect, sending a shiver down her spine. He also notes that her great magic power makes her his ideal match. At this, Jill realizes that Rave is a bit of a degenerate, falling for the whims of a little girl's joke and even willing to take her away. When Jill tells him it was all a joke, his expression shifts to a more serious one. He asks her if she truly wants to marry him, urging her to be clear if she doesn't. Unluckily for Rave, Jill confesses the truth. She explains that due to certain circumstances, she had to lie about the proposal. Just then, the dragon god, Rave, appears, mocking the situation and teasing the Emperor about how a girl could so easily propose to him. Jill recalls the legend of the goddess of love and earth, Kratos, and Rave, the god of logic and sky. For over 1,000 years, from myths to the founding of kingdoms, these deities had dragged humans into their eternal conflict. Kratos' kingdom had risen as a great magical nation, as most of its people were born with magical abilities. In contrast, in Rave's kingdom, magic was rare, but dragons were born in that land. As Rave and the dragon argue, Jill is stunned to learn that gods exist. The dragon thanks her for what happened the previous day. Since Jill can see and speak with him, the dragon states that she meets all the necessary conditions. Jill then asks Hadis, Rave, how old he is. He tells her he's 19, and notes that the age difference between him and Jill is normal. He further explains that his own mother, at 16, had married his father, who was 40. When Jill mentions wanting an heir, Hadis blushes, awkwardly remarking that it's inappropriate to discuss such matters when they barely know each other. He adds that everything has its order. First, they should talk, drink tea, and get to know each other better. Jill comments that Hadis's outward appearance and his inner self don't seem to match. She begins to realize that he's not what she expected, and moreover, that the entire marriage proposal was based on a lie. For this, Hadis apologizes, acknowledging that it was too convenient for a girl with such immense magic power to propose to him and fall in love so quickly. He promises that he will never forget her name or what she did for him, but now he intends to return her to Kratos. Hearing this, Jill is filled with dread, knowing that once she returns, only the incestuous worm Gerald will be waiting for her. Meanwhile, Hadis expresses his gratitude again, admitting that no one had ever declared they would dedicate their life to making him happy. That moment had been a dream for him. Jill, upon hearing this, can't believe what she's done, taking advantage of someone, just as others had done to her. Seeing the dragon wipe away Hadis's tears, she realizes he isn't a bad person after all. Moved by this, Jill takes back what she said earlier, and declares that she does want to marry him. Initially, Hadis is not pleased, thinking Jill is toying with his emotions. But Jill insists, explaining that she always keeps her word. Rave apologizes once again, and then Jill kneels before him, vowing that it will be her duty to make him happy for the rest of her life, no matter the cost. After reaffirming his loyalty to the Emperor, he casually mentions that he will finally get a wife. The little dragon thinks they are both crazy. Jill, for her part, admits that she is still very young and would prefer the marriage to be in name only, for the time being. The Emperor quickly scoops her up in his arms, thanks her, and tells her that he doesn't mind if the marriage is in name only. He also promises to treasure her like an amethyst. He quickly apologizes, explaining that he acted impulsively. Even though he doesn't fully understand what love is yet, he is determined to prove his seriousness. He then gently sets Jill down and kisses her hand before asking Rave to bless her. At that moment, an engagement ring magically appears on Jill's hand, the dragon consort's ring. This was proof of her status as the Emperor's wife, and more importantly, that she had been blessed by the dragon god. Rave adds that, to everyone else, she will be seen as his fiancé, but as long as she wears that ring, she is already his wife. Now, he swears to protect her from everything. Suddenly, the ship is attacked. Jill immediately suggests preparing a counterattack, but when she looks at the Emperor, she notices that he looks visibly exhausted. She asks the little dragon to take her to the port, though she feels conflicted. She had made an oath to protect the Emperor and make him happy. At that moment, Jill uses her magic to push the ship into the port. With her fists, she destroys the cannonballs that fly towards them. She points out that His Majesty had prioritized her safety over his, which was reason enough for her to help him. The ship lands safely in the port. Jill quickly declares that the Emperor is on board, that they were attacked, but thankfully, they managed to escape. She immediately orders the crew to take him to a doctor. After all this, the little dragon thanks Jill, but asks her to lower her voice, as it seems like she is the only one who can see him, making everyone think she is talking to herself. A short time later, Jill approaches the town sign and realizes that they are in Baleberg. The dragon asks her if she knows the place. Jill recognizes the name, remembering the tragic events that happened in Baleberg, but avoids talking about them, reminding herself that those events will happen in the future. Just then, a girl arrives asking for Lord Hadis. She mentions having heard that he brought a young girl from Kratos. This was Sphere, Jill's romantic rival. Sphere was the daughter of Marquis Bale, lord of these lands, and a candidate to be Hadis's fiancé. Sphere quickly confronts Jill, warning her that she will not allow her to steal Hadis, calling her a home-wrecking little kitty. Later at the castle, Jill reflects on the tragedy of Baleberg, which occurred during the banquet celebrating Emperor Hadis's return to Kratos. The Emperor had refused to marry Sphere, the daughter of Marquis Bale, and the distraught girl took the lives of the other candidates, set fire to the castle, and took her own life. Upon reflection, Jill believes that such a girl could not possibly commit such a horrible act. With the Emperor present here and his return to Kratos soon, she feels that the event is unlikely to happen. But if it were to happen, it would spark a civil war with Kratos. Jill also fears losing her subordinates and family again, remembering Zeke and Camilla. At that moment, the little dragon reappears and asks if Jill is all right, as being stuck in one place for so long would depress anyone. Jill assures him that she has been treated well, and immediately asks about the Emperor's health. The dragon tells her that he woke up a while ago, and the first thing he did was ask about her. He also mentions that the Emperor met Sphere, which kept him up all night out of worry. Just then, a soft knock is heard at the door. It is His Majesty, dressed in an unusual outfit and holding croissants he had baked for Jill. He explains that in order to win his wife's heart, he must start with her stomach, determined to make her fall in love with him. Jill calls him a demon with a handkerchief. The Emperor then adds that in the mornings, he will make her eggs Benedict, a dish unheard of in Kratos, and once she tastes it, there will be no turning back, assuring her that she will savor everything that comes out of it. Alarmed, Jill tells him not to say it in such an indecent tone. Rave quickly offers her a croissant. When Jill tries it, she is surprised at how delicious it is. This delights the Emperor, who declares that their marriage is now bound by croissants. Jill, however, is not amused, and punches him in response. The Emperor, rubbing his head, wonders what else could be missing besides some screws. A little calmer now, the Emperor mentions that he came to check on her. However, things seem to have become more complicated. Normally, she would have been released by now, as he had ordered her to be taken to the capital. This implies that Marquis Bale has rebelled and was likely behind the attack on the ship. Jill then asks Rave if he really believes in the curse. Rave tries to dodge the question, but eventually admits the truth. Jill asks if he knows that he is a contender for the throne with little chance of securing it. Because his mother was a concubine, only he or his elder brother could stay in the capital, but they decided to send him to the border, which essentially meant abandoning him. Furthermore, His mother was horrified by his ability to see the dragon, going so far as to call him a monster. This was because for generations, no emperor had been able to see the dragon god. When Rave turned 11, strange things started to happen. The crown prince, whom he had never met, died of an illness. They chose a successor immediately, but he too drowned in a bath. The next one hanged himself, claiming that he heard a woman's voice every night. The next one suffocated while washing his face in the morning. They died, one after the other, right on his birthday, as if something wanted him to become emperor. And although he insisted on his innocence, the only person who believed him was his older brother, Prince Vissel. However, Vissel was a low-ranking prince, so he didn't have enough power to do anything. After 5 years of unexplained deaths, it could no longer be called a coincidence. Rave's father summoned him and named him Crown Prince. Shortly after, his father also disappeared from the castle. On the day of his coronation, his mother took her own life, and that was when the cursed emperor was born. After hearing this, Jill can't believe what she just heard. However, Rave tells her not to be so surprised, as these are things of the past. Her brother had managed to convince the nobles and now everything was fine. But Jill knows that Prince Vissel will be the one to leak information to Kratos, and as a result, Rave will end up executing her brother and the other princes. Jill asks him if he doesn't think it's unfair what his family and this country did to him. Rave replies that he is the reincarnation of the dragon god Rave, and that he was born to be an emperor. The other people are subjects that he must protect, including his family, and refusing is like surrendering to his destiny. He also tells Jill that she shouldn't worry about the curse. As long as he has a wife blessed by the dragon, the curse will be kept under control. However, in a low voice, he mentions that they should be fine for at least 3 more years. Jill knows that he is still hiding something, but for now, she decides to let it go. She tells him that it's a fact that he has many enemies around him, so he wonders how he plans to get rid of them. Rave replies that if Beale tries anything against him, he'll crush him mercilessly, though he has no intention of fighting him for no reason. Jill then thinks it's best to gather information first, so she volunteers to leave the castle and do just that. At first, Rave doesn't want her to leave, thinking it's too dangerous. However, Jill replies, "What kind of wife wouldn't support her husband during such a crisis?" Upon hearing this, Rave is completely enthralled by Jill's words, and is now even more eager to bake cakes for her. Jill feels like he's a clumsy little brother that she can't take her eyes off of. After all this, Rave faints from a fever. The next day, Jill gets to work. After some time searching for information, she stops by the church, where she finds Sphere talking to the priest. Sphere seems to be in pain because apparently Emperor Hadis said that his wife must be 14 and she is 16, so she doesn't know what else to do. Jill continues her investigation, and at that moment, she notices a couple of soldiers. She had heard that soldiers used to be nobles, but these ones seemed a bit vulgar to her. These soldiers break into the church to take Sphere away against her will. Jill, who had been listening the whole time, initially didn't want to intervene, but in the end, she decides to confront them. Soon, a strange man arrives where Rave is. He tells her that a group of unknown people have taken over the port, and that supposedly the girl he brought from Kratos is leading them, and they have also kidnapped the young Sphere. It turns out that this man is Beale, the girl's father, and he quickly demands that Rave send his men to deal with the situation, as his daughter's life is no game. Rave asks him what he plans to do with his wife. However, Beale replies that she is not his wife, but merely a spy. He also mentioned that Jill easily took the port, which was under the protection of the Northern Squad, and demands that once the problem is resolved, that squad withdraw from the city. Rave warns him of one thing: if his wife is proven innocent, Beale will have to face all the consequences. But Beale replies that Rave should care more about his own well-being, as if the daughter of a marquis like him were to die by mistake, Rave would pay dearly for it. At the port, it seems that they are still looking for Jill, unaware that she has already been captured. Sphere quickly asks if they know who she is. The soldiers reply that they do. However, they have come from Kratos, supposedly under Jill's orders, as she had manipulated Rave. However, there was not much that Sphere could do, and now she finds herself locked up with that little boy, thinking that it is all her fault. Apparently, it was all her father's idea, as he was the one who suggested that she go talk to the priest about Hadis. Sphere tells us a little bit about her story. When she was younger, after her mother passed away, her father remarried almost immediately, and as a result, she was sent to another mansion where there was no place for her. She used to sneak away to a place where dragons rested, and even though they spoke to her when she was little, she couldn't understand what they were saying. That's how she ended up completely isolated. However, one day, the newly crowned emperor sent her a letter saying that he wanted to see her, and at their first meeting, he asked her if she could see something over his shoulder. She replied that she couldn't, and for that, her father scolded her, telling her that she had given the wrong answer. Then, he demanded that she return everything he had invested in raising her. But Lord Hadis intervened and started having tea with her once a month without fail. But one day, before Hadis left for Kratos, she confessed her feelings to him, and the Emperor, to her face, rejected her, saying that she was not 14 years old. Jill, now focused, plans to help the girl. However, she knows that she will be blamed for the kidnapping, and her only option is to expose the Marquis' conspiracy to the public. Just then, two people are thrown into the same place. They are Camilla and Zeke, whom Jill immediately recognizes. She begins to cry on the spot, surprising both of them. Camilla, for her part, blames Zeke for scaring her. Jill, for her part, begins to remember everyone, telling herself that in 6 years, she will lose many people. However, she quickly realizes that she has not lost anyone yet, and for the first time since she returned to the past, she feels like things are just beginning. This time, she will not lose anyone. After a brief look into the past, when Jill was talking to Camilla and Zeke, we realized that they were both from the Rave Empire, and neither of them possessed magic. We cut back to the present, where Jill is crying. Camilla likewise blames Zeke for making her cry, but he immediately gets angry and starts arguing with her. However, when Jill breaks her restraints, she quickly tells them to stop fighting. She easily frees herself and the others, as it is time to exchange information and take action. After some talking, it seems that the bandits had disguised themselves as the Northern Squad, lowered the gates dividing the port and the city, taken Marquis Bale's daughter hostage, and are now occupying the port. Camilla quickly comes to a conclusion after listening to Lady Sphere. This attack was ordered by Jill. In order to control this situation, Marcus Bale's private guard would obviously step in, and if they managed to arrest the bandits, they could claim that the Northern Squad was useless, which would get them chased out of Baleburg. Furthermore, the fact that this girl supposedly planned the entire attack, coupled with the Northern Squad's failure, would reflect poorly on the Emperor. At worst, if Lady Sphere were to lose her life, Marquis Bale would gain tremendous power. On top of that, the girl they want to blame wasn't even in the place where she was confined. This would be confirmed by a guard named Wardia, who mentioned that the girl wasn't in her room, as he was the one assigned to watch over her. It would simply make no sense for the girl who brought them here to not know where she was. Therefore, it was all a lie. It turns out that everything is convenient now, as there would coincidentally be fewer guards. Most likely the children of the nobles have been bribed, and those without political backing, like Camilla and Zeke, have been left behind. Until now, they had been left alone as they were searching for the girl, but it is certain that they will soon be eliminated, so the only option left for them now is to try to flee amidst the chaos to the northern country. Lady Sphere offers to speak to the Emperor while the others escape and hide, as she mentions that they will not eliminate her so easily. After all, she is having tea with the Emperor, and if they do not find the spy girl, they will need her testimony as a victim. She will tell the Emperor the truth, as she will not allow such a thing to happen. Jill remembers that everything is unfolding as she remembered. Lady Sphere would stay behind so that Camilla and the others could escape, and she would perish, bearing the disgrace of her father. This was what led to the tragedy of Baleburg. Jill quickly reveals her identity, and Wardia immediately recognizes her. In turn, Lady Sphere calls her a home-wrecking kitten. Jill mentions that, like them, she was also framed. However, the enemy still doesn't know where she is, so they must seize this opportunity. They will save the captive soldiers and protect Lady Sphere. Camilla, pleased, says that then the Northern Squad will be able to clear their name, and she will be able to find out who framed her for being a spy. Zeke, for his part, says that the Marquis won't be able to cover things up so easily, so he agrees as well. Jill tells Lady Sphere that the success of this mission depends on her, because if she dies, they will lose, and that she will protect her. However, he warns her that she will have to denounce her father, and if she cannot do so, she will be eliminated sooner or later. Before answering, Lady Sphere asks why Jill wants to save her, as she is her rival for His Majesty's love. Jill tells her that for the moment, she has no plans to fall in love with the Emperor. Although they had their reasons for getting engaged, and they are technically already married, it is only in name, as neither of them are in love with the other. Hearing this, Lady Sphere says that if it is a marriage in name only, then Jill might betray him. Jill replies that even if it is in name only, they have their reasons for choosing each other, so there is nothing to worry about. Besides, she promised to make him happy. Meanwhile, the king is talking to the little dragon, telling him that he has been thinking about ruling with an iron fist. Although the little dragon does not object, he thinks that little Jill probably wouldn't like it. Rave mentions that her safety is key, and depending on the situation, he will act immediately. For now, he will not get too involved because if he does, the Marquise, who wants to make everything worse, might eliminate someone else. For him, it is already a settled matter, as Marquis Bale is nothing more than a disposable pawn. However, he must now give him an exemplary punishment. In the end, Bileberg will fall under his control, and for young Sphere, her father will be eliminated, which will ruin the Beale family. Thinking a little about her future, perhaps she would be happier if she were eliminated now. On the other hand, Lady Sphere ends up trusting Jill, promising her that she will report her father. This is how Jill takes action. She first mentions that they must win. Before the Marquise's guards arrive, the first thing they will do is get out of that place and free the soldiers of the squad to help them. Wardia mentions that she has heard that they are being held in the church. However, she also heard that there are many wounded. This somewhat discourages Zeke and Camilla, who mention that they won't be much help in the battle. However, Jill orders them to take her to the church, while Zeke and Camilla stay behind to protect Lady Sphere, as she will pave the way for them. With one punch, she breaks through the wall. Before leaving, Jill tells them that she was once called the Demon Sergeant, and she expects a lot from them, though they shouldn't worry because she will make sure they don't perish. Jill quickly arrives at the church, where she takes care of the guards and frees all of her comrades. Afterwards, Jill introduces herself to the soldiers, claiming that she came on behalf of the Emperor to save them. She also reveals the truth about the attack orchestrated by Marquise Bale. It was all a trap to harm the Northern Squadron and the Emperor, and they blamed her for being a spy and were planning to get rid of Lady Sphere. To motivate the soldiers, she tells them that such infamous and barbaric acts are unforgivable. She asks everyone who can move to raise barricades against the enemy, and tells the wounded not to feel ashamed, as their wounds are badges of honor. It was time to fight for the Empire and His Majesty under his banners. It was time for the brave Northern Squad to retake the port and restore its honor. The soldiers quickly began calling her Captain Jill as they prepared for battle. Meanwhile, Hadis, realizing that he can't act right away, decides to start baking. But just then, the little dragon appears, telling him that his wife is amazing. He tells him that she escaped alone and is now fighting the enemy. At first, Hadis doesn't understand what's going on. The little dragon explains that while they're protecting Sphere in the church, the squad led by his wife is repelling the enemy, trying to take back the port. She even gave a speech about banners, and now the entire Northern Squad believes she sent them to rescue them. Hadis asks if Jill is trying to save them all. Then, she quickly asks the little dragon what he was doing. The little dragon replies that since he had nothing else to do, he was just cheering her on, and that's what he would continue to do until Jill ordered him to go to His Majesty. It seems that the damage to the city will only be at the port. However, it will be considerable. Therefore, Hadis will have Marquis Bale cover all the reconstruction expenses, as he prefers that to destroying his family. This makes the little dragon very happy, as he will not have to sacrifice Sphere, the squadron, or the Marquis' family. Maybe this way, Hadis could be an emperor loved by everyone, and not one who terrifies them. He also mentions that he has a good wife, and that she might actually end up making him happy. At that moment, a group of soldiers arrives where Hadis is. They tell His Majesty that Marquis Bale sent them to protect him and that they will evacuate him to a safe place. Hadis immediately replies that, as expected, the squadron will be able to retake the port. Now they want him not to witness anything. With a look of utter disgust, he tells them that he is trying to bake a cake and that they are only getting in his way. He quickly orders them to stay where they are and kneel before him. Back with Jill, the battle rages on. Seeing that they have liberated part of the port, he proceeds to return to the church where the soldiers are entrenched. Here, Hugo, the leader of the bandits, appears, offering the Northern Squad a deal. He asks them to tie up the spy girl and bring her before him. In exchange, they will leave the port in peace. However, if they refuse, they will burn the church. Jill thinks it's a good idea, as it's a perfect opportunity to confront their leader. However, Camilla quickly stops her, arguing that although her magic is powerful, she's still a child. Not just Camilla, but everyone tries to stop her. Jill quickly mentions that she won't make any mistakes that will ruin her strategy and asks Camilla for the rope. Apparently, she has a plan. Jill is tied up and brought by Wardia to Hugo. Once face to face, Hugo tries to attack her, but Jill is faster and manages to neutralize him, taking him hostage. She then sends everyone flying. It's all over, as the bandits' ships have also been destroyed, leaving them with no way to escape. Still, it seems that the bandits had one last option, the priest, who is also neutralized by Zeke. Hugo, realizing that he's been overpowered, begs Jill to let his men go, saying that he alone should be enough. He also reveals that he works for Marquis Bale. At that moment, Bale's forces arrive, betraying the bandits and eliminating some of them. Seeing Jill, Beale says that despite her young age, she is a witch of Kratos, a disgusting monster. Jill replies that she has arrived too late, as the Northern Squad has already managed to liberate the port. However, Beale does not care, stating that he only needs to eliminate them all. He immediately orders an attack with a huge dragon. Everyone, seeing it, runs to seek shelter in the church, but Jill is determined to stop it, knowing that if the dragon moves, the church will be incinerated along with everyone inside. However, at the last moment, the dragon does not attack, as in front of it stands the Dragon Emperor. Hadis descended from the roof to confront Beale, declaring he would never abandon his wife to flee to safety alone. The dragon quickly retreated, and Hadis showed concern for Jill, taking her into his arms and asking if she was unharmed. Jill, in turn, asked about his well-being. Once assured they were both safe, Jill quickly relayed what had happened at the port, explaining that the enemy's occupation had only been a distraction. She told him that the Northern Squadron had rescued Lady Sphere and herself, while also securing the port. Immediately, Beale accused Jill of being a spy, questioning how Hadis could not see her deception. He reminded Hadis that enemies still held the port, and asked him to trust his judgment and wait in the castle. He even suggested that if Jill had been manipulated by the bandits, he would readily explain that to the court. Seeing this as extortion, Jill called him a coward, recognizing that he ultimately intended to label everyone as bandits. Hadis quickly grabbed the bandit leader by the collar, noting that he looked good in the Northern Squadron uniform. He introduced himself as someone familiar with all the ranks, adding that it would be absurd if the Emperor did not know the names and faces of his own army. He then ordered them to reveal everything they knew about the mastermind behind the entire plan. Sensing the Emperor's imposing presence, Hugo quickly ordered everyone to swear loyalty to the Dragon Emperor, and they knelt down in unison. Hugo then recounted the day's events, introduced himself, and pledged unwavering loyalty. He also revealed that the real conspirator was Marquis Beale. Satisfied, Hadis declared his wife's innocence, and that it was now Bale's turn to face trial. When Bale tried to protest, Hadis silenced him, forcing him and his men to the ground. Hadis told him that the dead did not speak, and warned him that if his wife was proven innocent, Bale would face severe consequences. The time had come for Bale to ponder his fate, how he would be executed, and whether he would suffer for trying to harm his own daughter just to attack his emperor. Hadis then asked about the condition of Bale's second wife and daughter. Seeing Bale's expression change, Hadis decided to start with them and let Bale beg for mercy. Lady Sphere, looking disheartened, wondered aloud what would happen to her father now. Jill explained that if Beale confessed to all his crimes and surrendered Beelberg, he could be saved. Deep down, she understood that Hadis's true intention was to spare everyone involved. Beale then began mocking Hadis for his pathetic kindness, reminding him of his own mother's tragic fate and the losses he endured before claiming the throne. Beale declared he was simply defending his lands from a cursed emperor, claiming no one in the country wanted Hadis as their ruler. Just as Jill tried to intervene, Hadis remarked that he was already aware of these feelings. Nonetheless, he stated that, whether they wanted it or not, he was the emperor. He ordered Beale to be taken away, while Lady Sphere remained behind, explaining all that had happened. Later, in the former Marquise's mansion, Jill tried to locate the bedroom, noting how empty the place felt, as the former servants feared them. The little dragon explained the situation to Jill, who wondered why His Majesty hadn't joined them for dinner, thinking perhaps Hadis was pushing himself too hard. The dragon remarked that while Hadis might be somewhat naive, he was still the emperor, and not to be underestimated. He's a young man born with the skills and abilities to rule, but seeks to avoid governing through fear. Still, Jill didn't think it was right for Hadis to act as if nothing had happened. She worried that if he continued like this, he might end up losing empathy for others and for himself. The little dragon pointed out that, due to his limited interaction with others, Hadis struggled with boundaries, mistakenly thinking that simply breaking the curse would be enough for everyone to accept him. However, this approach could backfire. The dragon believed Hadis needed to experience genuine human kindness, or he might end up losing faith in humanity, especially given what happened to his mother. Hadis wasn't just the emperor, he was the reincarnation of the dragon god, and if he ever truly became disappointed in people, it could mean disaster. Jill thanked the dragon, acknowledging that, thanks to his guidance, Hadis had come this far. They needed to help him get used to people, maybe even shape him into a beloved emperor. The dragon asked Jill if she felt anything for Hadis, to which she replied that she felt like punching him. Despite her feelings, she had no intention of starting a romantic relationship with him until they became a perfectly married couple. Finally, they reached the bedroom, and the dragon informed her it belonged to both of them. Jill immediately felt nervous about spending the night alone with Hadis, but upon entering, she found him very drunk. The little dragon, concerned since Hadis had never drunk alcohol before, quickly set about helping him recover, with Jill's assistance. After a while, Hadis regained his senses, and seeing Jill, affectionately called her his amethyst. Relieved to see him looking less flushed, Jill brought him water and some fruit. Hadis asked if she would look after him, and Jill, pleased, responded that she was used to taking care of drunks, though she could call someone else if he preferred. Hadis reassured her, saying she was more than enough. Afterward, he asked for an apple, and Jill tried determinedly to cut it but couldn't manage it. Hadis laughed, pointing out that knowing how to wield a knife didn't mean she knew how to cook. He lifted her and sat her down in front of him, showing her how to cut it. Jill requested a rabbit-shaped cut, something she'd always wanted to try. With patience, Hadis transformed an apple into a charming little shape. Shocked by the outcome, Jill called Hadis a genius. He shared that he had learned this skill to perhaps gain the sympathy of his half-siblings. Jill, thinking of her own large family, mentioned that her parents, who had seen Hadis's proposal, would understand why he had not returned. Her family motto was, "Justice belongs to the strongest." Jill thanked Hadis for forgiving the bandits and the Marquise, knowing that he did so because she did not like violence. Hadis replied that it was only natural to save his wife. Jill expressed hope that he would remember that, cursed or not, she wanted him to live. She requested that if anyone ever questioned his right to live, he should reply, "There is someone now who wants me to live," meaning that he had her. This causes Hadis to blush and ask Jill if she loves him very much. She replies that her standards for love are pretty low, implying that for now, their relationship feels more like that of siblings. The Emperor can't resist and hides under the covers, claiming that he can't stop shivering from the cold. Jill immediately joins him, saying that his body temperature has always been warm, so he can use it to keep himself comfortable. But this is all a ploy by Hadis, who, while holding her, asks how she can treat her husband like a brother. That's just not right. Jill says that she was just worried because he seemed cold, but Hadis tells her to relax, as he has no intention of doing anything inappropriate. He also adds that it's perfectly fine for a wife to fall in love with her husband, and Jill responds with the same comment, but he assures her that he would never do something like that to her. Jill now wonders what he meant by that. Hadis quickly asks why she doesn't try to fall in love with him. If she does, he'll feel like finding out everything about her. Terrified, Jill turns away, thinking that if she dares, she will pay. Besides, she is 16 years old inside. She has already experienced her first love and suffered a terrible heartbreak. Soon, she falls asleep. Looking at her, Hadis wonders if she is more of a child or an adult. Even though she is 14, can see rave, and wields powerful magic, she couldn't ask for more than that. Still, he is not sure if she really meant it when she said she wanted to make him happy. Meanwhile, he wonders how it would feel to be loved. The next day, during lunch, Hadis offers Jill a baguette with cheese and hard-boiled eggs. After asking her if it was delicious and hearing her say yes, he quickly asks her if she has fallen in love with him yet. Jill asks him how many times he will keep asking the same question, and Hadis replies that he will keep asking until she says yes. Naturally, this startles Jill, but Hadis tells her that he's been attracted to her cold gaze lately as well, causing Jill to think he's simply a degenerate. Just then, Camilla and Zeke arrive, greeting Jill and apologizing for interrupting her conversation with the Emperor. However, it's time for their lessons. They both suggest that Hadis bake some treats while she waits. Hadis, mentioning how considerate they always are, offers them some cookies. Jill quickly scolds them both for allowing themselves to be bribed with food, adding that they shouldn't be so casual with him. Camilla is quick to point out that Jill was the one who told them she didn't want formalities. Zeke and Camilla immediately cheer Hadis up, telling him that Jill is more interested in him than he thinks, so they believe he has a chance. When they ask if he loves Jill, Hadis blushes and denies it, wondering aloud how he could possibly love his amethyst. He quickly becomes flustered, getting tangled in his own words. The three of them leave, and Jill, meanwhile, tells them to stop having fun at their expense. But Camilla reminds her that, as powerful as she is, her only ally in this place is the Emperor, so it would be wise to keep him wrapped around her finger. A blushing Jill quickly says they don't have that kind of relationship. They then tell her to stop running away every time he invites her to eat, but Jill mentions the food isn't the problem. However, they reply that by acting like this, she's giving him false hope. Jill seems oblivious to this, but Zeke and Camilla assure her they're on her side, advising her to ignore Hadis as his courtship is rather childish. Jill, for her part, mentions this is the first time she's been seriously courted by a knight, so she doesn't know how to handle it. Camilla quickly hugs Jill, thinking she's adorable, but Jill tells them not to jump to conclusions because, in the end, they'll be in a marriage where she won't love him. If she doesn't, she won't be able to guide him when he makes mistakes. Jill knows that her past self ended up entangling them both before, so this time she doesn't intend to repeat the same mistake. Camilla then asks her about the dragon consort ring. Jill says she can't take it off, as Hadis mentioned that as long as she's with him, she'll be under his control. This makes her wonder why he controls the one he's supposed to marry, and who is responsible for the curse. Zeke mentions that, if the legend is true, it's the curse of the goddess Kratos. Jill is shocked by this, and Camilla reminds her that Jill is originally from those lands. So she asks if the legend differs in her version. Jill explains that long ago, the goddess and the dragon god argued about what to do with humans and fought. The goddess wanted to protect them with love, while the dragon wanted to guide them with logic, which led to the continent splitting into two kingdoms, or so the story goes. She'd also heard that originally, Kratos and Rave were supposed to marry. Camilla confirms this is true, as the goddess's blessing on these lands eventually turned into a curse. There was a time when nothing grew in Rave until the emperor found a consort with enormous magical power who raised a shield atop the Rakia mountains and managed to protect the lands from the curse. It's said that this shield now forms the current borders. Unaware of the legend of these borders, Jill remembers that Rave had said the curse wouldn't activate if she was with him. At that moment, Lady Sphere arrives with an urgent letter for Jill. Seeing the handwriting, Jill immediately recognizes who it's from, is shocked, and drops the letter. Hadis arrives and, upon reading it, comments that he didn't know the crown prince was so passionate, so he'll have to prepare a fun welcome party. The letter reads, "I'm coming to find you now," signed by Gerald de Kratos. Hadis, accepting the challenge, declares that love is war. As Gerald recalls the humiliation he suffered at the hands of Rave, he finally arrives at Baleberg Harbor, determined to see for himself if it's true that Jill has become the monster's consort. Zeke and Camilla discuss the prince's sudden arrival. It's so unexpected that they haven't even had time to prepare. Camilla comments that that's exactly her goal, to catch them off guard. She also mentions that she wants to discuss the future of both countries with Jill present. Just then, Jill appears, looking rather displeased. Camilla and Zeke ask her to show a friendlier expression. Lady Sphere suggests that she should smile like ladies do. However, when Jill tries to smile, she looks more like a villain. Jill apologizes, explaining that softer expressions don't suit her. Lady Sphere insists that she has full confidence in Jill's charm, and that might be enough. She also suggests wearing an accessory which Jill thinks is a good idea, as she could use it to hide a weapon. Jill's disdain for Gerald is evident. Lady Sphere tries to calm the situation again, reminding him that Gerald thinks she's been kidnapped, so she needs to prove to him that she's happy and well treated. It all starts with her expression. Jill admires Lady Sphere's strength and promises to do her best. She then introduces herself to Hadis, who is shocked to see her so beautiful in that dress. He also suggests braiding her hair, as it's her specialty. Embarrassed, Jill refuses, saying that she's fine the way she is and that he looks much cuter anyway. Camilla and Zeke, who are present, remind them that there will be time to discuss such things later, as the prince is about to arrive. Hadis agrees, and mentions that Kratos has accused him of kidnapping Jill, so he needs to be there to deny it. All he has to do is smile. However, Hadis is shocked to see Jill looking increasingly terrifying. Jill explains that she sees this as a hostile encounter, and that her expression is simply a reflex. Hadis doesn't believe it, and tells her that Gerald is only coming to get her back. Jill quickly replies that that's impossible, as the prince's real target is probably him. She assures Hadis not to worry, as she will protect him at all costs. Unable to handle it, Hadis faints. On the way to the meeting, Jill realizes that both Hadis and Sphere know how to behave, but she feels a little depressed that she can't smile sweetly, as all she feels for Gerald is rage. Hadis scolds her for spending so much time thinking about the prince, wondering if there's something between them, perhaps a secret engagement. He says there's a thin line between love and hate. Jill quickly denies it, even though she knows Gerald might try to kill her in 6 years. Hadis immediately changes plans. Jill tells her she'll stay there and not let the prince see her. Jill refuses, arguing that it would be dangerous and do nothing to dispel the rumors of her kidnapping. Hadis doesn't care, declaring that she is his wife and he won't hand her over to Gerald. The two begin to argue and struggle, but Camilla and Zeke quickly intervene. Camilla tells Jill not to be so rough, as the Emperor is just jealous, and they need to prove that they get along. Jill then promises to try harder to smile. Hadis suggests there is a way to make her act sweeter, though it might be a bit extreme. Jill replies that it doesn't matter, she'll just make him tougher. Before doing so, Hadis asks Jill if she'll hate him afterward. She replies that she won't, adding that she always keeps her word. Fully prepared, Jill is surprised when Hadis takes her in his arms and kisses her. With this, she really looks like an innocent and adorable young girl. Camilla and Zeke, seeing this unfold, feel the urge to hit the Emperor. Jill mentions that it was her first kiss. Hadis immediately asks if, that being the case, she might want to repeat it later, in private. Jill, truly embarrassed, promises she won't hate him. However, the sound of a slap echoes throughout the castle. At the meeting with Gerald, he thanks them for receiving him, but states it's time to talk about Jill. Jill, in turn, says there's nothing to discuss. Hadis apologizes, explaining that they had just had a lover's quarrel before entering, and that his fiancée is still very young, so he asks Gerald to excuse her behavior. He adds that, in part, it might be Gerald's fault, as the moment he mentioned the prince was coming, he automatically became jealous. Jill realizes that Hadis wants to pretend her anger was due to jealousy, but for some reason that only annoys her more. Hadis then apologizes for not having responded sooner to the Servel family, but requests that they stop saying he kidnapped Jill. Gerald wonders how it's possible for an emperor to allow himself to be struck, but Hadis quickly responds that he is an emperor who kneels before his wife. Jill tells Hadis that with her, all he needs is a heartfelt apology, and tells Gerald not to worry about her, apologizing for having made him come all this way. Gerald realizes that Jill has no intention of returning. He mentions that their engagement had already been decided, and he doesn't understand why she has renounced a future as his wife, leaving her family and country in such a manner. Jill replies that it is because the emperor needs her. Hearing this, Gerald comments that in that case, it would be enough that he no longer needed her. He adds that the terms of their engagement required her to be under 14 years old and to possess the ability to see something His Majesty indicated, as he was looking for a young girl with enough magic to see the dragon god and thus protect herself from the curse. Gerald wonders what would happen if Jill is unable to avoid this curse. Furthermore, he has heard about the incident at the port and that Hadis has chosen not to punish the Marquis for political reasons. This will make the people feel relieved and believe that the curse is just a rumor. However, if the curse is not broken, Marquis Bale will lose his life anyway. At that moment, Wardia bursts in with an urgent message. Beale stopped breathing. Later, Jill, along with Camilla and Zeke, discuss Beale's passing, as it seems that he suffocated in his cell. Jill immediately asks about Sphere, but is told that he has already gone to identify the body. Despite everything her father did to her, this must be very hard on her. Zeke immediately suggests that they ban talking about it, but Camilla quickly replies that it is too late, as the entire town already knows, and now everyone is afraid of the Emperor's curse. Jill states that it is probably Gerald, as he said something disturbing during the meeting. Now, with the passing of the Marquise, people will come wanting to blame the Emperor for his curse. Jill knows that Gerald has already used these methods in the future she knows of. Camilla asks Jill if she remembers the story of the magic shield, as it seems there is a second part. After protecting these lands with the magic shield, when the goddess found out that they had nullified her curse, she was enraged. The shield would have shattered her if she had come in her true form, so she disguised herself as a black spear and ordered it to be brought here. Jill then asks if he's referring to the goddess's sacred spear, inherited by the Kratos family. Zeke is surprised that it actually exists, as he thought it was just a legend, like the dragon god's celestial sword. However, that sword had disappeared centuries ago. Camilla continued the tale, explaining that the spear traveled across the sea, arriving at the Rave Empire. A member of the Kratos family presented it to the imperial couple, and the spear pierced the dragon consort. Realizing it was the goddess, the consort retaliated with the sword, sealing the goddess within her own shadow at the cost of her life. In the end, the magical shield dissolved and the curse on the land was broken, though the goddess was unable to regain her true form. As they discussed the legend, Jill wondered if they were planning to target Hadis for being the cursed emperor. However, no one was sure who would want to harm him, though it was clear that the death of Marquis Bile would increase the public's resentment towards the emperor. At that moment, Lady Sphere entered, emanating a dark, sinister aura that made her seem unlike herself. Zeke and Camilla suggested that she rest, but Sphere insisted on greeting them first. Her eyes were completely black and she conjured a black spear, attacking Jill without warning. After evading the attack, Jill was confronted by Sphere, who revealed herself to be the true wife of the Dragon Emperor. Zeke and Camilla attempted to intervene but were overpowered. Seizing the moment, Jill kicked Lady Sphere away and disarmed her. Hadis appeared, confronting the malevolent entity, but Jill managed to save Sphere's body and informed Hadis that Sphere was being controlled. However, Hadis seemed unconcerned and claimed that she would finish them both off. Sphere, now possessed, laughed maniacally, claiming that she was the only one who could love Hadis. She launched an attack at Jill, but Hadis intervened just in time to stop the spear. As the spear transformed into the dragon consort, claiming that she was the only one for Hadis, Jill destroyed it with her bare hands. Hadis berated Jill for saving Lady Sphere, stating that if she had not intervened, she could have ended the entity. Jill defended her actions, saying that she had driven out the shadow. Hadis suggested that the entity could still be hiding within Lady Sphere's body and asked Jill to hand it over. However, Jill refused, claiming that the shadow had declared itself to be Hadis's true wife. Hadis responded coldly, stating that he never expected Jill to ask for his fidelity, especially since she did not love him. He then ordered Camilla and Zeke to gather all the young women in the city, warning them to be especially wary of girls under the age of 14 and to annihilate anyone who became violent. He justified the action by saying that they would use an evacuation as an excuse, and anyone who refused would be charged with treason. A distraught Jill begged Hadis to reconsider, arguing that this forced approach would only further alienate people. Hadis dismissed her concerns, stating that there would be no exceptions. He expressed doubt that anyone in the city was suitable for the entity, but acknowledged that if the curse was not broken, it would be a major problem. Jill recalled that the goddess Kratos was unable to regain his original form and that his powers awakened when he turned 14. If the story was true, girls under 14 could not become vessels of the goddess. To repel her, they would need a child. Hadis orders Camilla to take Lady Sphere and keep her within his protective barrier. Before he leaves, he mentions that it would be easier to end Sphere's life, but that he is giving in to Jill's wishes because she is his wife. Later, Jill reflects on her situation in her room, cursing Hadis for not trusting her. She thinks about the Black Spear, the goddess vessel, and the dragon consort. Everything seems to confirm that the legend of the two gods marrying is true, and now she is trapped in it. Despite all this, she remembers the good things about Hadis. Although he faints easily and is unreliable, he cooks well, taught her how to make apple bunnies, and granted her wishes, even when others insulted him. He wanted them to be husband and wife and sought his love. She realizes that she should thank him for saving her. When Jill leaves her room, she runs into Hadis. They both hesitate, unsure of their feelings, but the little dragon appears and urges Hadis to apologize. At first, Hadis refuses, claiming he has done nothing wrong, but eventually admits that he does not want Jill to hate him. Jill asks to see his left hand, and when he does not respond, she takes it herself. She notices the open wound and offers to heal it with her magic. Hadis warns her not to be nice to him, or he will not know how to respond. Jill tells him that if he does not want her to be nice, he should not apologize so quickly. She points out that despite claiming to want her love, he has made no effort to get close to her. He has not even called her by her name. Rave tries to explain, but Hadis stops him, saying that they must not love each other because that would only lead them to hell. Before they can continue, guards arrive, informing Hadis that the city is on fire. It soon becomes clear that it is a trap. Hadis orders Rave to protect Jill and sets up a barrier. He quickly takes out the guards, who turn out to be the husbands and fathers of the girls he had ordered captured. These men had started the fire to create chaos and blame the Emperor's curse. Wardia arrives and asks what has happened. Hadis explains that the infiltrators are villagers trying to kidnap the women. Hadis asks if the fire is real, and Wardia hesitantly confirms it. He knows that those who have rebelled against him want his head, but he asks Wardia to do her best to put out the flames while he takes care of the rest. Jill tries to stop Hadis, but the little dragon assures her that he is safe within the barrier. With a sad look, he apologizes, leaving Jill in a mix of worry and helplessness. If you've reached this point in the video, don't forget to leave the word exquisito in the comments. Thank you very much, and see you in the next video.